Hi guys, I'm Natasha Beram and welcome to Learn Extra Maths Literacy Session 1. Now, Maths Literacy really focuses on the practical application of basic mathematical skills. You will be examined at the end of grade 12 on all the work that you have done so far in Maths Literacy. But before we get started with this session, let's just look at some basic exam tips. Firstly, always remember to use the correct units when you answer your question. So for example, if the question is given to you in meters, then make sure that your answer is also in meters. Another point to remember is that you should always round off correctly. So round off to the correct number of decimal places or significant figures. If no instruction is given, you can generally round off to 2 decimal places. Also, remember to show all working when necessary. And just on that point, also be aware of the mark scheme of the question. So for example, if the question is only for 2 marks, then it does not require a lot of work. Let's look at a few examples using scientific notation. In example 1, we are asked to express that number which is in scientific notation as a number. Now, what you will notice is in scientific notation, there's always just one number or one digit to the left of the comma. Also, be aware of the fact that since the power is positive, we are dealing with a very big number. So when the power of the 10 is positive, this implies we are working with a big number. And in order to change this number, what we are going to have to do is move the decimal point to the right. So therefore, I will get 5, and I'm literally moving this comma 6 places to the right. So we're going to get 50056. So if you count with me, the comma was originally in this spot. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. So that means in that space I need to put down 2 more zeros. So here the comma has moved 6 places to the right when we expressed this really big number without scientific notation. Now let's look at the next example where we are going to be expressing a really small number without scientific notation. So here we are given 4,5 times 10 to the power of negative 5. Since the power is negative, again, this implies that if the power is negative, we are dealing with a small number. And this means that when you multiply, you are going to have to move your comma to the left. So if there's a negative power, this implies a small number. And it also means that when we multiply by the 10, we are going to move the comma to the left. So therefore, the comma starting there, we've got 4,5. We're going to move this 5 places to the left. So that's 1. And there we put a 0, 2, 3, 4, 5. And in all of the places where we've got gaps, we put in zeros. So this is going to become 0, 0, 0, 0, and one more 0, 4, 5. And when dealing with negative powers, so in other words, very small numbers, what you will notice is that the power actually tells you how many zeros you should have in front of your numbers. So here the power was negative 5, therefore we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros in front of our number 45. So we are going to now look at more examples using scientific notation. In this example, we are asked to write this number, 139 million, in scientific notation. Now, in order to write a number in scientific notation, you want just one digit to the left of your comma. So we just want, in this case, the 1 to be to the left of our comma. You are then going to multiply by 10 to some power. And in order for you to figure out what that power is going to be, all you have to do is count the number of places that you would have to move the comma in order to get to 1,39. So it will make more sense while we actually do this example. So remember, the comma is starting here. So we're going from the right. We want to see how many places must this comma move so that I get just 1,39. So let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Therefore, in order to get 1,39, so just the 1 to the left of the comma, we need to move 8 places. So therefore, the power here would be 8. So my answer, writing 139 million in scientific notation, is 1,39 times 10 to the power of 8. We are going to do exactly the same thing when dealing with a very small number. So let's look at the second part of this example. So here we've got 0,000504. Because there are zeros in front of the number, that means that this is a small number. In order to write this, and in order to get just one digit before the comma, so I want just the 5 here to be before the comma. I just want 5,04. I'm going to have to count from the left how many places I would have to move this comma to see what the power of the 10 would be. All right, so let's count from here. So we're going from the left-hand side. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 places that we have to move this comma in order to get 5,04. So because we started from the left, our power here is going to be -4. All right, and again, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros in front of it, so that's another way for you to check. So my answer here in scientific notation is 5,04 times 10 to the power of -4. So just recapping, the power of the 10 is the number of times you actually move your comma so that you get just one digit to the left of that comma. So continuing with example 3, in this example we are going to do most of the working on the calculator. So make sure that you have your calculator handy. We are asked to calculate the following, which is this expression here, and we are asked to give the answer in scientific notation. And you will notice that you would have to use the scientific mode in order to give your answer in scientific notation. But before we actually call up the calculator, a very, very important instruction is given here. They say round off to 2 decimal places. You need to remember to keep that in mind when you get your final answer. So we'll come back to that. Remember that we have to round off to 2 decimal places. So we're going to call up our calculator and enter that expression, and let's see what we get. Okay, so again, make sure that your calculator is in the scientific mode and enter the expression exactly as you see it. So we're going to have brackets, open brackets, 5,67 times 10. For the power, we're going to use that button there, and it's going to be 10 to the power of 12. Close your brackets, times, open the second bracket for the second part of this sum, 3,45 times 10 to the power, and in this time it's -8, and then again remember to close your brackets. We're now going to hit the equal sign, and that is what we get. So we've got 1,95615 and so on times 10 to the power of 5. So let's just write down just the first 4 or 5 digits of this, and we'll get to our final answer from there. So we've got 1,956. Let's just call it up again. 5615, and there's some zeros, times 10 to the power of 5. But remember, your question said round off to 2 decimal places. So again, guys, keep that in mind. You are not going to get all the marks if you don't round this off. So we've got 1.956. We want to round off to 2 decimal places. That means we need to look at the third number after the decimal comma. If it's above 5, then we're going to round this up. And in this case, the third digit after the comma is 6. So this is going to become 1,9. We're going to round this up, 6 times 10 to the power of 5. So that's it for scientific notation. We're going to move on to some basic percentage calculations. Remember, in order to find a percentage, you have to times by 100. Let's look at examples of these. We are asked to convert the following into percentage form. Now, again, to convert any number to a percentage, all you have to do is times by 100. So we're going to take 30 over 100, times it by 100 over 1, and this will just give us an answer of 30%. So what we've done really is we've replaced this over 100 by that percentage sign. So that's really easy stuff, guys. That's basic calculations that you've learned in grade 10, but you need to keep this in mind as we go on in later sections. Let's look at the second part of this. So we've got 5 over 20. We want to change it to a percentage, so we need to times by 100 over 1. So this is going to give me, and you can do this on your calculator if you like. I'm going to do it the long ways without a calculator. 20 goes into itself once, and 20 goes into 105 times. Therefore, 5 times 5 will give me 25%. But as I say, guys, you really can do this on your calculator. So literally type these into your calculator, get your answer. You will not specifically be examined on changing numbers into percentages, but you do need this knowledge for later sections. All right, and the last one, we've got 0.25, so exactly the same thing. We times by 100. Remember, when you multiply by 100, we are going to have to move the decimal point 2 places to the right. So therefore, we are going to get just 25%. So from there, we've moved it 1, 2, so the comma is sitting there now. So that just gives me an answer of 25%. Now with the next examples, we are going to be converting into decimal form. So in order to convert a percentage to a decimal, all we have to do is divide our percentage by 100. And then, because we are dividing by 100, we are going to move our decimal point. So let's do this example. So 20%, to write it as a decimal, it's going to become 20 over 100. And because you're dividing here by 100, you need to move your comma to the left. So in this case, we are going to get my comma starts there. I'll move it 2 places to the left, 1, 2. So in decimal form, 20% is 0,2. So in decimal form, again, 0,2 and 20% are equivalent. The second part, we're going to look at converting 5% into decimal form. So again, we do the same thing. We write it as 5 over 100. And we need to move the comma, which is always sitting here, to the left because we are dividing. So we are going to move it 1, 2. Remember, where there's a space, that's where zeros belong. So this answer is going to become 0,05. And now for the last part of this, we are going to take 120% and convert it to a decimal. So this is going to become 120 over 100, exactly the same process. Move the comma 2 places to the left because we're dividing. So 1, 2, my answer here would be 1, comma 2. We don't need to put the 0 in. So guys, that's it for percentages. So you now know how to change into percentage form and how to change a percentage into decimal form. We also looked at scientific notation, rounding off, and some calculator work. Now all of those basics we are going to use and incorporate in the next exercise, which you should really practice and make sure that you understand for yourself. So let's look at exercise 1. Here we are asked to express 3,21 times 10 to the power of 5 as a number. You will notice that the power is positive, and a positive power means a big number. But more than that, it also tells you in which direction to move your comma. So here, our comma needs to move to the right. Okay, how many places? 5 places to the right. So we start, we've got 3, 2, 1. We're moving the comma from that spot, and we're going to count 5 places. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's where our comma is going to end. And in all of these spots, we're going to put zeros in. So our answer here is 321,000. So 3,21 times 10 to the power of 5 is actually equivalent to 321,000. Now in example B, again the power is positive. That's telling you which direction you need to move your comma. In this case, we have to move the comma 3 decimal places to the right. So our comma starts here. We're going to move it 3 places. That's a 1, 2, 3. So that's where it's going to end up. So my number here is going to be 4,942,1. For example C and D, we are dealing with smaller numbers because the power is negative, or the powers are negative. Remember, when you have a negative power, you have to move your comma. So for a negative power, we have to move the comma to the left. And because these are very small numbers, you will find that there will be zeros in front of your number. So here we are going to move from 4, 5. We are going to move 5 places to the left. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's where my decimal point is going to be. And all of these spots we fill up with zeros. So our answer here is 0,000,045. And if we count here the number of zeros in front of the 45, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros. So exactly the number of places that we moved our decimal point. And now for the last example in exercise 1. So 1,09, we are going to move the decimal point 7 places to the left. So remember your comma starts there, 1,09. We're going to move it from that spot. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And that's where it's going to end up. And all these little blanks here, remember, you fill them up with zeros. So, and then 0 in front there. So the answer is in fact 0, comma, and then another 6 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 zeros, 109. And if you count all the number of zeros together, you do in fact have 7, which was the power of the 10 in the beginning. So now guys, we're going to move on to exercise 2, and there are 3 parts in this exercise where we are asked to write them in scientific notation. So in the first example, we've got a really big number that we have to write in scientific notation. And remember, that means we're just condensing it, making it look a little bit neater, and we're going to times it by 10 to some power. So we want to get to a point where we've got 6 comma, And remember, we want just one number to the left of the comma, which is what we really want. We're going to then times all of that by 10 to some power. The power we are going to get by deciding how many places from the right we need to move in order to get just to the 6 before the decimal point. So let's count. So we're starting here. We have to move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 places so that we get to a point where there's just one digit to the left of the comma. So therefore, 11 would become the power of the 10. So our final answer is going to be 6,005,003 times 10 to the power of 11. So here we've taken a really big number and condensed it using scientific notation. Now in the second part of this exercise, we are given a really small number. And how do we know this? Well, there are a whole lot of zeros in front, and so that means we are dealing with a really small number. It should also tell you that the power of your 10 is going to be negative. So we want to get to a point where we've just got 1 comma to 1, and we've got to figure out how many places we need to move the comma in order to get that. So from the left we have to move, count with me, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 places. So we've got to move 10 spots in order to just get to 1 comma to 1. That 10 becomes the power, but be careful. Because we are moving from the left, that means that this power needs to be negative. So the answer here would be 1,21 times 10 to the power of negative 10. So now let's move on to the last part of this exercise, number 3. We are told that the speed of light is 299,792,4 kilometers per second. And guys, be very careful here. They have given you kilometers per second in the question. Therefore, in your answer, you need to also give them back kilometers per second. So we need to condense this and write it in scientific notation. So we want to get to a point where we've just got the 2 to the left of the comma. So it's going to be 2, 997,924 times 10 to the power of, and that's what we're going to figure out by seeing how many places this comma has got to move from the right. So let's count that. We've got to move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 places from the right to get that answer. So therefore my answer would be 2,997924 times 10 to the 5. But be careful, you're not done. You need to give your units here. So it would be kilometers per second. So let's move on to exercise 3. Most of the work in this exercise is going to be done on your calculator. So make sure that you have it ready and handy, and make sure that it's in the correct mode. We are working with scientific notation, so your calculator is going to have to be in scientific mode. Okay, so for the first part, we are asked to add 2 figures which are in scientific notation form, and then very important, you are told to round off to 2 significant figures. Now guys, remember, significant figures is different from decimal places. So rounding off to a certain number of significant figures is different from rounding off to a certain number of decimal places. Significant figures really just mean you are writing down the digits that you are sure about in your calculation. Okay, so we will get to that at the end. So firstly, you need to call up your calculator, make sure that it's in the right scientific mode. All right, and we're going to just type in the question as we see it. So we've got brackets 1, 7 times 10 to the power of 4, close your brackets, plus open brackets 2,95 times 10 to the power of 5, and then close your brackets again, hit the equals button, and you get 3,12 with a whole host of zeros times 10 to the power of 5. So we've got 3,12, some odd zeros, times 10 to the power of 5. So now you need to stop and say, well, hold on, they wanted two significant figures. Have you in fact answered the question? No, you haven't, because two significant figures here would just give you the relevant digits of 3, 1. So those would be your two significant figures. We won't be interested in the 2 and all of those trailing zeros. So to two significant figures, we would get 3, 1 times 10 to the power of 5. So we will carry on now with the B part of this exercise. Here again, we are going to use our calculator, and very important, they say to three significant figures. All right, so let's call up our calculator. We're just basically going to type the question as it is into the calculator. So it's open brackets, 3,74 times 10 to the power of negative 3. We are then going to close our brackets, and then we're going to raise this entire bracket to the power of 4. All right, so that's what it should look like on your calculators at home. We then hit the equals button, and we get 1,9565 and some other numbers times 10 to the power of minus 10. So let's write down the first few. 1,9563, and there were some other numbers, times 10 to the power of negative 10. All right, now here remember they said to three significant figures, so that means the three numbers that you are in fact sure about. So that would be the first three here. We firstly need to round up the 5, so this would become 1,96. So all we've done is we've seen, well, the number to the left of the 5 here is a 6 greater than 5. Therefore, we have to round this up before writing down our significant figures. So we get 1,96 times 10 to the power of negative 10. So if you count, we have 1, 2, 3, 3 significant figures. And now for the last question of exercise 3. Here we are given that there are 2,3 times 10 to the power of 8 bees in a hive. So obviously that's a lot of bees. Then they tell you that each bee weighs 1,38 times 10 to the minus 5 grams. So here they've given you some units to think about. They want to know what is the total weight of all the bees, and you need to round up to 3 significant figures. All right, so again, this is going to be done on our calculator. But remember, if we want to know what the weight is of all the bees, we are going to have to take the number of bees and multiply that by the mass of each bee to tell us in total what the weight of all the bees is going to be. So we are going to take the number of bees, which is 2,3 times 10 to the power of 8, and we are then going to multiply that by the weight of each bee. So that's times 1,38 times 10 to the power of negative 5, and here we were talking about grams, so obviously our answer is also going to be in grams, and we are really now just going to put that into the calculator and see what we get. So let's call up the calculator. All right, again, make sure it's in scientific mode, and we're just going to type this into our calculator. So we open our brackets, 2,3 times 10 to the power of 8. Close your brackets. Sorry, first move it down, then close your brackets. Times, open another bracket, 1,38 times 10 to the power of negative 5. Again, close your brackets and then hit the equal sign, and we get 3,174, a whole host of zeros, times 10 to the power of 3. So we've got 3,174 some other numbers, and times 10 to the power of 3. All right, so before we answer this in its final form, we need to be careful. They said we have to round up to 3 significant figures. So that means looking at this, we're only interested here in the first 3 numbers. So my answer rounded up to 3 significant figures would be 3,17 times 10 to the power of 3. And then guys, just be careful here, because the question was given to you in grams, your answer needs to be in grams. So now we're going to look at percentages in greater detail. Remember that percentages are really important for all the work that you will do in maths literacy, but especially in sections like financial maths, data handling and probability, which we will do in later sessions. So in this percentage section, we are going to look at finding the percentage of a quantity, increasing or decreasing a quantity by a given percentage. We are also going to look at percentage increases or decreases, and we are going to calculate percentage profits or loss, and finally we are going to look at calculating the cost price and selling price. So let's get started with this section. In the first part, we are going to revise finding the percentage of a quantity. So this is really just a very quick example to remind you how to do an example of this nature. So we are asked to find 35% of 600. Remember, percentage is your number written over 100, so with a base of 100, or a denominator of 100, and we're going to times that, because of is the same as multiply, by 600 over 1. Now guys, this part of the section we can do on a calculator. So we're going to call up our calculator, and we are going to do 35%. You can do it as 35 over 100 on your calculator, or you can use your percentage button. I'm going to use the percentage button here. So we're going to have 35, shift percent to get to our percentage sign, times 600. And this will give us an answer of 210. So therefore, 35% of 600 Rand is equal to 210 Rand. Again, important, remember your units. So here we were given Rands in the question, so we must have Rands in the answer. In this section, we are going to be looking at percentage changes. Now, when looking at percentage changes, we are really interested in 3 things. The starting value or the initial value, the value that we end up with, and the percentage change. You need to be able to work out all 3 of these things. First, let's look at increasing or decreasing a quantity by a given percentage. The first example asks us to increase 365 Rand by 15%. But before we get there, let's just do a little note on percentage increases. All you have to do when you want to find a percentage increase is you take your initial value, so these are the steps to find your percentage increase. You take your initial value, which I'm going to call I. You then times that by 1 plus whatever your percentage is, all over 100. So in other words, we want the percentage in decimal form. So let's just go over that again. To increase a number by a given percent, all you have to do is take your initial value, times that by 1 plus your percent in decimal form. So let's use that concept to do example 1. So here we are asked to increase 365 Rand, so that is my initial or my starting value, and my percentage change is 15. All right, so we're going to use that formula there. So we're going to take 365 Rand times that by 1 plus my percent here, which is 15, all over 100. You can now put this into your calculator. So we're going to do that in a little while. We're going to get 365 times 1 plus 1 0.15, but we can do those steps in our calculator. So we call up our calculator here. We're going to just type this in, 365 times, in brackets, 1 plus, use your fraction button, 15 over 100. We then close our brackets, and you get an answer like that, which we really don't want in that form, so we need to change it so that it's in decimal form, and we get 419,75. Remember your units here, you were given rands, so we end with rands as well. So it's 419,75. So now we're going to look at percentage decreases. It's very, very similar to the concept we just learned for percentage increase. What we do for percentage decrease is the following. We take our initial value or our starting value, which I'm going to call I, and we then times that by 1 minus whatever your percent is all over 100. So you would notice here the only change from the previous example is that we now changed from a plus sign to a minus sign because we are looking at a percentage decrease. All right, so in order to decrease a number by a given percentage, all you do is you take your initial value and then times that by 1 minus your percent in decimal form. So therefore, let's do this example using this concept. We are going to decrease 150 by 3%. So I'm going to say 150 times 1 minus my percent over 100. We're going to put this all into our calculator. All right, so we type in 150 times, in brackets, 1 minus. You can use your percentage button here, or you can do it as I am, 3 over 100. Close your brackets, and we get 291 over 2, which is obviously not the form we wanted in. So we change it to decimal form and we get 145,5. So guys, if we take 150 and reduce it by 3%, we end up with 145,5. Now it's very important that you check that your answers make sense. So for example here, we are decreasing by a percentage change and therefore we end up with a lesser value. We are going to move on now to writing one quantity as a percentage of another. Now, in order to do that, all you do is you first write the first quantity as a fraction of the other quantity, and then we times by 100 over 1. But it will make more sense with an example. So example 3, we are going to take 5 over 40. So assume you've got 5 out of 40 for a test. You want to know what percentage is that? So all you do is you first write it as a fraction. So it's 5 over 40. We then times that by 100 over 1. You can put this into your calculator. So we're going to have 5 over 40 times 100. This will obviously change this into a percent, and that gives us an answer of 12,5%. So 5 over 40 is 12,5%. Now we want to write 45 over 300 as a percent. So all we're going to have to do here is write our first number over our second number, times that by 100, and let's see what we get. Or alternatively, you can just use the percentage button on your calculator. So we're going to have 45 over 300 times 100. That gives us an answer of 15. So if you get 45 over 100, say for a test, then you will only get 15%. So question 2 says, in a school, 10 out of every 45 learners walk to school. And then they give you the instruction that your answers need to be rounded off to 2 decimal places. So keep that in mind for when you get to the end of your example. Firstly, we want to know what percentage walk to school. So we know that 10 out of every 45 learners are walking to school. Therefore, we can write this as a fraction as 10 over 45. We are then going to multiply this by 100 to change it to a percent. And we can do this on our calculator. All right, so we're going to have 10 over 45 times 100, and that gives us 22,2 and a few 2's after it. So we've got 22,222 and so on. But remember guys, they want the answer to 2 decimal places. So here we are just going to have 22,22%. The second part of this question wants to know what percentage don't walk to school. Now remember, 10 people walked to school, and altogether there were 45 learners. Therefore, the amounts of people that, or the amounts of learners that don't walk to school would be 45 minus 10, which is 35 learners don't walk. And we want this in a percentage form, so we're going to write it as 35 over 45 times 100, or you can just use your percentage button, and we will get 35 over 45 times by 100, and that gives us 77, and there's a few sevens after that, so we've got 77,777, and that goes on. But guys, remember here they said round off to 2 decimal places. So all I do here is I look at the third number that's greater than 5. That means I need to round up. So I will get 77,78% of all learners do not walk to school. Now, another way you could do this is you could say, well, all the students in the school represent 100% of learners. And you know that 22,2% walk to school. So you could simply say 100 minus 22,2, which would also give you an answer of 77,78. So that is another way that you could do question B. Now we are going to look at finding a percentage increase or decrease. The most important thing to bear in mind here is that the quantities that you are comparing need to be exactly the same. Now, in general, to find a percentage increase or decrease, all you do is you take your end value minus your start value, divide that by your start value, and then times by 100. So let's write that formula down. So all we do for any type of percentage, either increase or decrease, so this is for a percentage increase or a decrease, we just take our ending value minus our start value. We then put the entire thing over our starting value, and we times this by 100, and that will tell us whether what is our percentage increase or decrease. Guys, please note that when you get a negative answer from this formula, it means that you have got a percentage decrease. So let's do example 4. Here we have that at the beginning of high school, your height was 1,09 meters. So this is your starting value. You start at 1,09 meters. You then grow by 20 centimeters. So that is the change in your height. They want to know what is your percentage increase. So we know what your centimeter growth is, but they want to know what is the percentage increase in height. Correct the nearest whole number. All right. So we know we started at 1,09 meters. We know that our change was 20 centimeters. And a very important thing here as I said right at the outset, is make sure you're comparing similar quantities. So 20 centimeters, we can either convert that into meters, or we can take the 1,09 meters and change that into centimeters. So we can change that into meters, remembering here that 100 centimeters is equal to 1 meter. Or alternatively, we can take the 1,09 meters and say that that is 109 centimeters. Because we know our change already, so in this formula where we take end value minus start value, we know that that amount is 20 centimeters. So we're going to have our percentage increase as 20, which is the change in our height, all over the starting value, which is 109 centimeters. We are then going to times this by 100. All right, so let's take out our calculators and see what we get here. Okay, so we've got 20 over 109, and we are going to times that by 100. So that will give us 18,3486. All right, so we've got 18,3486 and some other numbers. We want the percentage increase to the nearest whole number, so therefore this would just be, the percentage increase would be 18% to the nearest whole number. So let's move on to the next part of this example, where we look at a percentage reduction or percentage decrease. We are told that the price of a TV is reduced on a sale from 4,999 Rand, so that is our starting value, to a value of 3,500 Rand, so that is our end value. They want to know what is the percentage reduction correct to the nearest whole number. Okay, so remember, all we're going to do is we take our end value minus our starting value. We put that entire thing over our starting value, and we then times this by 100. Okay, you can put all of this into your calculator, and then let's just see what we get. So we're going to call up our fraction button. We're going to have 3,500 minus 4,999 all over our starting value, which is 4,999. And we are then going to times that by 100. And this gives us an answer of minus 29,98. So here we get minus 29,98 and so on. Now guys, it's important here to note that you will not give the negative as part of your answer. The negative here just tells you that you are in fact looking at a percentage decrease. So therefore, to the nearest whole number, we are looking at a 30% percentage decrease. A profit or a loss can also be calculated the way we just worked out percentage increases and percentage decreases. So let's see how. All you do is you take your actual profit, divide that by your cost price, and you times by 100. And this will in fact give you your percentage profit in this case, or if you are working with a loss, it would give you your percentage loss. So let's look at an example of this. Here we are told that a shopkeeper makes a 22.50 Rand profit on a pair of jeans. So this is our profit. So that is the change from the value we bought the jeans at, so in other words our cost price, and the change to our selling price is 22.50 Rand. We are told that he bought the jeans for 90 Rand, so that is our cost price. And they want to know what the percentage profit is. So remember, all we are going to do using this formula is take our actual profit, which is 22.50 Rand, divide that by the cost price, which is 90. we want it as a percent, so we need to times by 100. So we call up our calculator and we are going to say 22.50 over 90 times 100 and see what we get. And we get an answer of 25%. So therefore, he is making a 25% profit if he makes an actual profit of 22.50 Rand. Now we are going to look at calculating cost price and selling price. Now guys, when you're working out the cost price, you really are working backwards. So it can be a bit confusing, so make sure you understand this quite well. So we are given example 6. A street hawker sells pies at 6.50 Rand, so that is the selling price. And he says that he is making a 30% profit. They want to know what the cost price is. Okay, so we have our selling price, we have our percentage change, and what we need to work out is our cost price. In order to work out your cost price, all we have to do is just write it as our selling price. I'm going to just write that as SP all over 1 plus our percentage in decimal terms. So we're going to take our percentage and divide it by 100. So we're going to have it in decimal terms in order to work backwards and get our cost price. Please note that if he was working with a percentage loss, so not a percentage profit, but a percentage loss, then we would change the denominator to 1 minus P over 100, as you will see later. So to work out our cost price here, we're going to take our selling price, which is 6.50 Rand, and we're going to divide this by 1 plus 30 over 100. So this would give us 6.50 Rand all over 1 plus 30 over 100 is just 0.3. You can put it either in this form or in that form into your calculator. So let's call up our calculator. We're going to type in 6.50 Rand all over 1. You can write it as 30 over 100 or 1 plus 0.3. I'm going to put in 1 plus 0.3. And we're going to get an answer of 5 Rand. Therefore, the cost price, noting your units here, we are talking about selling pies, so we're working in rands. So our cost price here would be 5 Rand. And that is how you work out your cost price when you have a percentage profit. So let's move on to working out our cost price as in example 2, but in this case we're dealing with a loss. So example 2 reads, a car dealer sells a car for 45,000 Rand, but because of poor economy, he had to sell it at a 10% loss. What was the cost price of the car? So we have, this is our selling price, we know what our percentage loss is, and we're trying to work out the cost price. So here, using that formula I gave you before, all we're going to do is we're going to take our selling price and put that over 1 minus. So all that's happened here is we've changed from a plus in the last example to a minus in this one. 1 minus our percentage over 100. So if we do that, we know our selling price is 45,000 Rand all over 1 minus a 10% loss. So we can write that as 10 over 100 or 0.1, whichever you prefer. All over 1 minus 0.1. We can then put this into the calculator and let's see what we get. Alright, so we're going to have our fraction button and we've got 45,000 all over 1 minus 0.1. And that gives us an answer of 50,000. So therefore, The car, you can see, cost him 50,000 Rand, but now because of the poor economy, he has to sell it at 45,000 Rand, which means that he is making a 10% loss. Okay guys, now we're going to look at an exercise where we make use of all the different ways that percentage changes can occur. So here, we need to complete a table by calculating the percentage increase or decrease, and they tell us here that we need to round off to 2 decimal places. So let's go through the table. Firstly, we have an original amount or a start amount of 250 mLs. Our new amount or our end value is 125 mLs, and they want to know whether it's an increase or what the increase or decrease is. So obviously, if we've gone from 250 to 125 mLs, if we take our final amount, which is 125, minus our start amount, which is 250, we will end up with 125 mLs. Negative, implying that it would be a decrease. So you can put in a D here for decrease, or you can put in the negative to show that it's a decrease. We then have to work out what the percentage change is. So remember, in order to do that, all you would do is take your increase or decrease. In this case, we have a decrease. Divide that. We're going to divide by our starting value, which is 250. And then we times by 100. You can do this on your calculator. So we say, call up our fraction button, 125 over 250, and we are going to multiply by 100 to change it to a percentage, and that gives us an answer of 50%. So therefore here we are going to have 50%. So we had a percentage decrease of 50%. The next part in this exercise, we have 1 meter, 125 millimeters, and our new amount is given to us in 2 meters. Now guys, straight away you need to start thinking about your units, because we are given an amount that includes millimeters, but our end amount only has meters in it. So you can decide whether you would like to change this entire thing to millimeters on both sides or change it to meters. I'm going to opt to change the first original amount from 1 meter 125 millimeters to 1,125 meters. Okay, remember that there are 1,000 millimeters in 1 meter. Alright, then they want to know, is it an increase or decrease? So all we are going to do is take our new amount, which is 2, minus the 1,125, and you will get an answer. Notice both the original and the new amount is in meters. Our answer here is going to be in meters as well, 0,875 meters. Alright, so we know what our increase is, or we're going to do, so that was A, and B, we're going to take our increase divided by our original amount and times by 100 so that we can get the percentage. Okay, we can do this on the calculator. So we are going to have 0.875 over 1.125. We are then going to times that by 100, and we will get 77,777 and so on. So we've got 77,777 and so on. Go back to your instruction, and they said round off to 2 decimal places. So that means we look at the third digit here, which was a 7. So that means I round up here, and my answer would be 77,78 as a percentage change from the original amount to the new amount. So let's do the last part of this table, which is the C part. Here we are given an original amount of 400 Rand. We have a final amount of 550, so we can see that there clearly is an increase. And we need to find out what that increase or decrease is, and then work out the percentage change. So we're going to take 550 Rand minus 400 Rand, and that's going to give us 150 Rand, and this is an increase. All right, to work out the percentage exactly the way we've done it before, we take that change of 150 Rand, divide it over the original value, which is 400. We then times by 100, and we are now going to put this into our calculator. So we have 150 over 400, times that by 100, and we get 37.5%. Okay, so here our percentage change is 37.5. No need to round off because it was already in 2 decimal forms. All right, so that's the end of that exercise, or the first part of that exercise. Let's move on to the second part of the exercise. So again with the table, this time we are asked to complete the table by calculating the percentage profit or loss. So this is very, very, very similar to the example that we've just done where we filled in our percentage changes. All right. So we have a cost price of 100 Rand. Our selling price is 150. And the difference between the cost price and the selling price is, so we take our selling price minus our cost price. So here we're going to get 150 minus 100, which would give us 50 Rand. Now, is this a profit or a loss? Well, because our selling price is greater than our cost price, this means that it was, of course, a profit. To work out the percentage change, all we are going to do, or the percentage profit, is we are going to take our difference between our cost price and our selling price, which in this case is a 50 Rand profit. We are going to take that 50 Rand profit, divide it by our cost price of 100 Rand, times that by 100. You can do this on the calculator, but it is quite easy to see that this would be just 50%. So therefore here we have a profit of 50%. So let's move on to the B part. Here we have that the cost price is 3,000 Rand. Our selling price is 2,500. So the difference, we're just going to take our selling price minus our cost price, and we get a difference here of 500 Rand. We're not going to write negative 500. The negative just tells us that it is in fact a loss. Okay, to work out what percentage loss this is, we are going to take the value of our loss, which is 500 Rand, divide that by our cost price, which is 3,000 Rand, times the entire thing by 100, and let's see what percentage we get. So here we're going to have to use the calculator. So we're going to have 500 over 3,000. We are going to times that by 100, and we get an answer of 16,666, and so on. Now remember, they said to 2 decimal places. So if we look at the third digit here, which is a 6, it means we are going to have to round up. So this will just become 16,67%. Okay, let's do the C part. Here we are given the cost price of 25,000 Rand, and it was sold for 75,000 Rand. The difference is just going to be 75,000 minus 25,000, and the answer there would give us a 50,000 Rand. Because it's positive, we can see it's going to be a profit. And now exactly the same way we have worked out the others, in order to find out what the percentage profit is, you take your actual profit, which is 50,000, divided by your cost price, which is 25,000, times that by 100, and let's see what we get. So we have 50,000 over 25,000. We are going to times that by 100, and we will get a 200% profit. So that is quite a huge profit to make on something. So here, if you have an item for 25,000, sell it for 75,000 Rand, you will in fact be making a 200% profit. And let's do the last part of calculating our percentage profit or loss. Okay, so we take our selling price, which is 15 Rand 50, subtract our cost price, which is 9 Rand. 15 Rand 50 minus 9 Rand is 6 Rand 50. It is a positive value, so therefore it is a profit. All right, and then in order to find the percentage profit, we take our actual profit, which is 6 Rand 50, divided by the original or cost price, which is 9 Rand, times it by 100, put that into a calculator, and let's see what we get. So we've got 6 Rand 50 divided by 9 times by 100, and we get 72,22. All right, so our answer here would be 72,22, correct to 2 decimal places. Okay guys, now you've had quite a lot of practice on working out percentage changes in the last 2 examples. So if you need to go through more of these, please make sure you do, but we are going to move on to the next exercise. Alright, so there are quite a few questions here. The first part, we have that the price of a motor car was reduced from 95,000, so that is our start value, and it goes down to 75,000, so therefore that is our end value. They want to find out what the percentage reduction is. So remember, all you do to work out a percentage reduction, exactly as we've done before, you take your end value minus your start value, put it all over our starting value, and then we times by 100 to give us the answer in percentage form. So therefore, by doing that, we will get, okay, put it all into your calculator, 75,000 minus 95,000 all over the original amount, and we times that by 100, and that gives us an answer. Remember, the negative just tells you that you are in fact looking at a percentage decrease. You do not give negative as part of your solution. So here our answer is going to be 21,0526. All right, so we're just going to write that down. 21,056. They have not told you to how many decimal places you need to round this off. So remember, you can round off to 2 decimal places if no instruction is given. So this will become 21,06%. Okay, we're going to now move on to question 4. Here we are told that there are 560 learners in a school in 2010, and this is 25% more. So you know that there has been an increase from the previous year. They want to find out how many learners were in the school in 2009. So basically we're going to work backwards. We want to work out what the original amount of learners were when they're now at 560, and this is a 25% increase on the previous year. So all we are going to do to work out the original value or the original number of learners in 2009, we are going to take our current value divided by 1 plus, and here we have a 25% increase, so we're going to have 25 over 100. This is very, very similar to the examples we did with cost price and selling prices, the formula that I'm using here. So if you're a bit confused of why I'm doing that, go back and revise that. So this will be 560 all over 1 plus 25 over 100 in decimal form is 0.25. So let's put this all into our calculator. So we are going to have 560 all over 1 plus 0.25. This gives us an answer of 448. So therefore we now have, well, we used to have 448 pupils in 2009, and we now have 560, which is a 25% increase from 2009. Now, for question 5, you're going to have to go back again if you've forgotten the work we've done in this session and revise some of the work on cost price and selling price. They want us to find the selling price of a t-shirt which cost 120 Rand to make and was sold at a loss of 12%. So we need to work what the selling price was if it cost 120 Rand. So we've got 120 Rand, that is our start value or our initial value, and we made a loss of 12%. So all we are going to do here is we are going to times by 1 minus, as I said before, if you're not sure why I'm using this formula, go back and do this session again. We sold at a loss of 12%, so it's going to be 1 minus our percentage loss in decimal form, so it's 1 minus 12 over 100. We're going to put this into the calculator. So we have 120 times, in brackets, 1 minus 12% or 12 over 100. And that gives us an answer of 105.6, where, because we are talking about money here, we can interpret to be 105 Rand and 60 cents. 105 Rand and 60 cents. And here, just make sure that this makes sense to you. Remember, you are selling at a loss, so therefore it makes sense for the value that you get in the end to be less than the value that you started with. All right, let's do example 6. Here we are told that a shopkeeper wants to sell a pair of shoes at a 60% markup. Now, a markup is just another way to say an increase. So here we are told that he's increasing on the cost price of the shoes. When they don't sell, he then discounts them by 10%. How much does he finally sell the shoes for if he paid 135 Rand for them? So he takes the 135 Rand and he sells it. He wants to sell it at a 60% markup. So from 135 Rand, remember to increase a number, this is our start value. So to increase a number, you take the start value, times it by 1 plus your percentage increase in decimal form. So it's 1 plus our percentage increase, which is 60 over 100, which will give us decimal form. So it's 135 times 1 plus 0.6. We can then put that into the calculator to see how much he wanted or he marked up the shoes by at first. So we have 135 times 1 plus 0.6, and that gives us an answer of 216 Rand. So he marked them up to a price of 216 Rand. But now the shoes don't sell. So then what he has to do is he has to discount. Remember, discount is the same as saying a percentage decrease in this case. So therefore, when he discounts them by 10%, it basically means he's taking that value of 216 and he is reducing it by 10%. So to find a percentage reduction, remember, you take your start value, which in this case is 216. You then times it by 1 minus, because we are looking at a discount or a reduction, your percentage form in decimal terms. So we write it as 10 over 100. So it's 216 times 1 minus 0,1. You can then put this into your calculator. So we get 216 times 1 minus 0.1, and that gives us an answer of 194 Rand and 40 cents. So therefore now he can only finally sell the shoes at 194 Rand because they weren't selling at the price of 216 Rand. So guys, that's it for this exercise on percentage changes. As I said at the start of the session, this is a very, very important concept that will come up in many other sections. So make sure that you understand it.